RChili is the trusted partner for pairing, matching, and data enrichment, helping companies hire better talent faster. RChili help recruiters connect candidates with jobs by enhancing the candidate experience, simplifying the hiring process, reducing hiring costs, and saving time and money. For more information, visit www.rchili.com.
What great ideas are so close within your grasp? Seeing other points of view, anticipating change, considering multiple possible turnouts, acknowledging uncertainty, searching for compromise. We're going to talk about how to get over those limiters of innovation so that you can extract better thinking from yourself and your team. So let's talk about how to win the future.
In this episode, I'm joined by Nitin Sharma, recruitment entrepreneur, podcast host, and the brains behind RecTools. We're talking all about the rise of podcasting in talent acquisition and how it's become a seriously powerful tool for TA teams. Nitin shares what started as a simple lead generation idea and grew into a full-on content platform with over 70,000 subscribers. We dive into how podcasting can boost employer brand, build credibility, and engage with the most passive of candidates. We also get into some of the practical stuff, why you don't need slick production, how real conversations always beat a polished script, and why it's time for TA teams to take the lead on the mic. Enjoy. Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules podcast. And it's my pleasure to welcome on board my brother from another mother. It is Nitin Sharma, the man, the myth. Apparently, he's got a podcast, but not that he tells anyone about it. Nitin,
You might have heard of it.
welcome to the Marketing Rules podcast. I usually get people to give a little intro, but I know with 70,000+ subscribers, most of the industry probably know who you are. However, for that one or two people that are still living under a rock right out there, maybe you could kind of give us a little bit about your background, mate.
Yeah, no, thank you. First of all, mate, cheers for having me and hosting me on this. I get to do the thing you're doing a lot more than actually be a guest, so it's nice. It's a little change from normality. A bit about me. I was dumb enough to run a recruitment business, scaled it, and ultimately failed it. Learned a lot of lessons along the way. During that time, set up a kind of a project, so to speak, or a passion project, if you will, called RecTools, which was kind of in my brain something that was needed, i.e. all these suppliers and in the supply chain for the industry, let's all put them in one place so people can find them easier. And then off the back of that was sort of like, oh, hang on, people actually do need this and want this, so let's see if we can do something with it. So try to turn it into a proper business. And as part of the sort of the go-to-market marketing strategy with that, decided to really double down on the podcast. And the podcast has now effectively gone from being what was a lead magnet to put eyes on RecTools, to actually being the product and the thing that everybody wants. As you said, yeah, over 70,000 subscribers on YouTube to date. We release 2 episodes a week and effectively showcase all the supply chain that I work closely with, who are classed as clients, about who they are, what they do, and what problems they solve in the recruitment industry.
Were you much into podcasts before you started the podcast? Were you an avid listener? Was it just, or was it something different? You know,
Truthfully, no. I'm not a great advocate for this, because I don't really listen to podcasts short of, I watched a handful of clips of things like the Joe Rogan podcast on things like TikTok and Instagram. And then the same with things like what, sort of the comedians, so Theo Von, Andrew Santino, Bobby Lee. And then sort of wider than that, I'm a massive wrestling fan, so I used to listen to little clips and bits from wrestling podcasts. But I was kind of like, this is a medium that's growing in popularity. Your mainstream, what were celebrities are now moving to that platform as well, as a way of kind of remaining relevant, I think. And look, there's obviously people out there that listen to them. I'm not one of them, but for me, it was purely okay, how do I get my name and brand out there with kind of minimal effort, because I'm lazy, but also kind of something that I would consider to be enjoyable along the way.
That's interesting, because I think a lot of people get into it because they think, oh, I've listened to loads and loads of these, so I think I can do it myself.
Yeah.
right? I think that's the easy, which is
Yeah.
interesting because that
Yeah.
brings us into kind of what we're discussing today, which is right. If you are in the talent acquisition space and you think that a podcast is the kind of is a way forward for you, how do you get going? So maybe if we kind of just roll that back a little bit, if you are in talent acquisition, why would you even start a podcast in the first place? What's in it for you, right? Is it the best medium, or is
Mm.
it kind of just a passion project or a vanity project?
I think, look, there's no issue with it being a vanity project, right, or a passion project. There's a lot of people that get into it for those reasons, but I think the truth is there is a really clear commercial route to what a podcast can bring for you. If you think about kind of what pain points a TA leader or a TA team would have, one of their key issues, certainly historically, maybe not as much anymore, although given where the market is, one could argue that, but a big core daily battle they have is credibility with line managers and hiring managers within the business, especially the ones that have got kind of embedded relationships elsewhere with other recruitment consultancies and agencies that kind of disrupt process. So you've got a real opportunity to provide thought leadership and really explain kind of who you are and why you do what you do. TA often unfairly get banded as sort of failed agency recruiters. But when you really kind of peel that layer back, actually what it is they just didn't enjoy the business development side, or more specifically, the sales side of recruitment. Podcasting is a great way to kind of show your skill sets, your, as I said, your thought leadership, your insights, your understanding. And then you've got the sort of the positive byproduct off that comes available to you, which is kind of the content that it creates that allows you to, share from a personal brand perspective, an employer brand perspective. Why do I want to work for this business? Well, actually, here it is in their own words. It's a great medium to get otherwise camera shy people in front of screen. And it's very different to kind of scripted videos. I don't do anything scripted. I know there are some podcasters that like to kind of have, a 45-minute to an hour discovery call prior to going live and have set questions asked. And if that's your process, cool. But certainly I find what's brought me most success
Yeah.
is just a conversation, because that's what it allows you to do. It's not
Yeah.
a chat, it's a
I,
conversation.
and that's interesting because you started on that kind of internal comms piece. And I always come at it from an employer branding piece, obviously because of what we do as a day job, and the way that you can
Mm,
really kind of showcase company culture and use it as that talent attraction kind of engine, right? What is it like to work at this business? So many businesses, I think,
mhm.
are understand employer branding, but this can go much deeper, right? This gives potential kind of candidates and job seekers that real deep insight into the people they might actually be working with within a business. If you've got a big enough,
Yeah.
if you're in a big enough company and you're running as a TA person, you're running a podcast, and you're interviewing people from within your business. The likelihood at some point you're going to kind of make your way around most of the kind of team leaders from within the business, and someone who, and as an example, they need someone, a credit controller in finance or something like that, right? That's a kind of area that just never gets a look in when it comes to employer branding because it's not particularly sexy, right? But if you've got someone who's particularly
Mhm.
charismatic within in that team and you've had them on the podcast, that does your employer branding no wonders because that showcases, right, that every part of your business can be really exciting no matter where you sit, even in what would traditionally be classed as the boring bits, right?
Yeah, totally. But the facts are, like, if you look at the stats and stuff like that, it's something to the tune of 73, I believe it is 73% of people will research a product or service after hearing about them or seeing them on a podcast, right? Because it's not an advert. It's not a polished purpose put together video. There are lots of cute career pages that have got, and here's our head of social, and here's our head of marketing, and here's our head of sales, and reading out kind of the benefits of working for this company. This isn't one of those. This is a true conversation. So if I am to use your example, look, if I'm a credit controller and I'm sitting there going, I am interested in this company. I am. And oh, hang on, their head of credits on a podcast. Let me just listen to him, because this is the person I'm going to be working for or working alongside. This is the team that I'm going to be working under. And I need to understand, do I like this person or am I like this person? Because that's going to be the reason that I decide that I want to apply. and I want to further my application, short of just clicking a quick apply button on LinkedIn and hoping that I get a phone call, right? It's a great way to attract talent to your business that are passively looking. And we talk about passive candidates in recruitment all the time, and it's almost a fallacy at times, right? But the fact is, a podcast will open you up to actual kind of forward thinking people who want to be part of that business and have made the decision, not because you're paying the right amount of money or not because you've got the right level of hybrid working, but because actually that head of credit is somebody that I recognize, I know, I've heard of. I want to be part of
And
that
on
team. You know,
and
you won't
on
get
the
that in any
same
of the
kind of
media.
note, it can also be used as like business attraction, almost like a business development tool, right? Because what we, businesses
Absolutely.
want to
Yeah.
work with businesses that are like them, right? They want to see mirrors of themselves. So if you're coming across as this, this highly engaged, kind of multiple channel kind of like format content engine, right? Whether that is stuff about whatever product you're selling or service, but stuff about the stuff what it's like to work at your business. Those other businesses will say, "Look, that is a cool business, right? We want to kind of give them because we know they treat their people right. We know they've got this great company culture. We want to be aligned with that as well, no matter what that product or service might well be that the company actually sells." Um,
And dare I say, though, you would actually, talent acquisition is more than just about hiring people into the business, right? It's a retention piece as well. There's a big talent attraction piece, but there's also a big talent retention piece. And dare I say that when businesses aren't hiring, unfortunately, TA becomes obsolete, and are often seen as the first department to get rid of. But if your TA team is producing, valuable, if it's a content engine that your marketing team are relying on, and your sales team are relying on, and actually what you're finding is that your revenue driving arms of the business are referring back to your podcast, and your prospect clients and your prospect relationships that you're trying to build in those revenue driving teams are referring to your podcast as something that they've seen and noticed. Well, that kind of firmly puts your ass back at the seat at the table and maybe gets rid of the potential looming redundancy because of a downturn in hiring decisions, right? It's a real good way to kind of establish yourself as a real kind of permanent fixture in this team.
Oh
Because
no,
not
no, no, no.
everybody can podcast.
I always kind of it's like a muscle, right? It needs to be worked. It's a skill that needs to be picked up. I'm sure when you first started, like myself, I was fucking awful, right? And I would love to kind of go back and actually delete some of those, but they're there as a good kind of like sanity check, right? And it's a good to say, look, this is where you started, this is where you ended up. Um, so that said, what is it? The next step would be right. Why are you going to do this in the first place? What is going to make it worth listening? What are you going to talk around, right? In your kind of podcast, because there's all kinds of formats, right? And there's always you can kind of go about. You can go for the scripted model, you say. You can go for the more conversational, the kind of things that we do. You can have just where it's maybe two people from within the business discussing what's going on. You can do the interviews. You
Mhm.
could do quite short formats. That's more kind of
Yeah, I've seen ones that are doing
right,
incredibly well that are
yeah.
literally just 5 minutes.
So what makes it worth listening to in the first place? What is it what are the things that you've learned that make it really engaging?
For me,
Yeah.
it was,
You
what
don't
would I
listen to
listen to,
podcasts though, so it doesn't really matter.
right? Because no, no, exactly. So for yeah,
I'm teasing.
look,
I'm teasing,
I
mate.
tried, and I kind of no, but you're absolutely right. Well, I've got to be the one that does this, right? So it's got to be enjoyable. For me, it was a case of, listen, I want to enjoy this to the point where this is what I do for a living, And I don't subscribe to the mantra that, work should be work and you should grind and you should hate your life. And do you know what I mean? Like those 40 hours a week you should be throwing yourself into with kind of depression and anxiety. I don't subscribe to that. I'm not a hustle grind culture mentality person. For me, it was, okay, what would I listen to? And what I would listen to is a conversation. What would I listen to? A conversation, not somebody sitting there in front of the camera just talking and the guest sitting there like, well, what am I even here for? Um, I I like a light-hearted conversation. I like it to be kind of emotional, thought-provoking. I like to have intellectual discussions. I don't want to sit and just completely agree with the person sat next to me the entire episode. I want to challenge. I want to go, well, hang on a minute, because I know that in the back of my mind, I'm thinking this, and there'll be people listening that would think the same thing. So for me, it was a case of what would I listen to, and let me replicate that. Because if I wouldn't listen
No,
to it, I can't expect
no.
anyone else to.
I also
You know,
think it's a good time to kind of to see how it could align to whatever EVP you've got going on within your business, right?
right?
And whatever the EVP is kind of setting out and laying out, can you then align the content and what the listening experience to your podcast as well, right? You might want to be moving to much more towards, I don't know, a much more diverse culture within your business, and that's one of the keys of your EVP, right? So really, you can really kind of tie that in to your podcast. That's a pretty kind of blunt tool, right? I get it, right? But
But also have a
yeah,
really honest conversation about it and the challenges that you faced within that, and the difficulties and the questions that have come up, and the can I ask that? Is that really appropriate? I don't know about this. Have really open, honest panel discussions, and you'll be surprised that people that resonates with will then come to you and be like, "Wow,
yeah,
I'm glad you said that." You know, I had I had the fortune of being at IHR in Manchester, and they were good enough to book all the guests for me, right? And so I had a wonderful lady join me, Liz, who sits down, and she was just like, right, okay, let's just jump straight into it. I'm the founder of Ability People. And I've gone, all right, cool, cool, cool. And we start discussing and talking, and I'm playing devil's advocate because I'm like, look, the fact is that I'm going to come at this from the perspective that we had where, we were talking about, our recruitment business was over 2 floors, all the salespeople were upstairs, and the discussion was, we don't have a lift. If we had somebody who was not able-bodied and able to come upstairs, what would we do? And we landed on, we just wouldn't hire them. And the conversation went and went and went. And she was sort of like, this was really insightful because people are usually scared to tell me this. Later on, I find out that actually she's a gold medalist Paralympian. And I'm like, shit, didn't even talk about that. Like, you know what I mean? But it was kind of so insightful because we were able to have an honest discussion that you otherwise wouldn't have. And I've had loads of people come to me and reach out after that episode went out to say, you said everything that I would think, or you said everything that my husband would normally say, and I just don't know. And those sorts of
yeah,
sparking those sorts of conversations really does position your podcast as like I
yeah,
need to as a must listen, not just a nice to have. And taking that back to sort of the value for a TA perspective, the number of doors that will open up for not just a talent acquisition and retention perspective, but also businesses that want to do business with you. You guys are going on a DEI drive, so are we. Hey, do you know what? These are some of the, you were really open and honest about that. We've had similar challenges. We should meet up and go over this.
exactly. Yeah,
That's
as I
how
said, it's
business
that
is done.
mirror, right? It's that mirror for other businesses that are possibly kind of going through the kind of same challenges. But I thought the only thing I would possibly kind of push back on that is those conversations that you've had there. You can probably do that because you've got the experience, right? I mean, we get over. You're a nice guy, right? You're not necessarily there to overly provoke them, right? In those, because you're asking the questions that you think need answering. But doing that on the fly doesn't always necessarily come easy, right? You've got to there's practice involved with honing your craft as a podcast host, right? Which is one of those things that I would imagine comes with literally just doing it hundreds and hundreds of times.
I think if you're,
You
listen,
know,
I don't do scripts. I can't do scripts. In fact, if you look through things like, my LinkedIn and my Instagram, you'll see videos of bloopers that I've put out where, I'm trying to script
yeah,
just a simple sentence and I just can't get it out. But a
yeah,
conversation I can have with anyone, and that's just that
yeah,
I think goes for most people. So when you're thinking about what format should I do this in, if you're not this type of person that can do scripted conversations, if you're not the kind of person that can color within the lines, and you are just naturally somebody that sort of says what comes to mind, listen, if you can have a conversation in a staff room or in a canteen, if you can have a conversation while
yeah.
having a fag,
Th-
you can host a podcast. Because what you're not doing is you're not auditioning
right.
for the BBC
Yeah, I
or
mean, I think a
ITV.
lot of people kind of put quite a lot of pressure on themselves when it comes to these things. The way I always kind of when I'm talking to
Yeah.
people about it, and the easiest way to structure it is just have a set of questions that you want to answer, right? Because most people react better around that. So if it's being a host can be a bit tricky, but being a guest isn't. I always thought is a slightly easier thing because you're getting asked the questions. You know your subject. So if someone's just firing questions at you, you're just going, and you can talk eruditely and you can talk engagingly about it and do that. And so if you are the host, put the questions to yourself, right? How would I answer this question? And you're just gonna just rattle it
Hmm.
off.
Hmm.
You might ramble a bit, but we all do. That just you might end up thinking that you like the sound of your own voice, but we're hosts of podcasts. we kind of do like the sound of our own voice, right? It's our thing. So that's the way I put it. If you are thinking about it, just go format it like questions. That's the best way to kind of go about it.
I think my only kind of concern with that then becomes that oftentimes people are not very good at listening. And so what ends up happening is you ask the question and you're not actually listening. You're just thinking about the next question that you need to ask. And that then doesn't become that's not a conversation, that becomes a chat. Do you know what I mean? And I'm a real kind of advocate for there's a difference
I
between
think
a
that's
chat and a
where
conversation.
honing your craft as a host comes in, though, right? Because yeah,
But that comes with practice, right? So you
yeah,
just got to A, get on with it and do it, and B, actually take notes and listen and learn and take feedback on board because it's not personal. If somebody's reaching out to you to say, listen, that episode you did a lot of talking and you're the host and you probably shouldn't be, don't take that as a sniper or an attack. Take that as like that's really
yeah.
constructive
Oh no,
feedback.
I've
I'll
had
do
people
something
come
about
back to me saying that was a good episode, but you said and quite a lot, which is just happens. You end up doing some kind of crunch words, but yeah. I mean, again, I just think it comes from honing your craft as a good host because, like yourself, I can. I might have a few questions that I want to ask, but there'll be stuff that comes along in the middle of that, and you think, I'm going to circle back to that, right? There's a bit I can dig a bit deeper into that, and whether you need to make some notes or you can do it off the top of your kind of head, you can remember all that. That's it. But again, I think that just comes from time in doing it.
I think you got to remember TA worked. Oftentimes, TA have worked in agency. In agencies, you were expected to be able to conduct a client meeting with a whole range of different types of businesses and business owners and hiring managers, right? So that's a skill that you don't lose. That's not a skill that you forget. These guys are again managing relationships and sort of stakeholder management with key people within a business. It's not something that you just forget how to do. You just got to kind of almost tap back into that side. I think if you can have a sales meeting, you can host a podcast.
Right. Let's talk about some of the more kind of technical stuff when it comes to kind of podcasting. And it's kind of the question I get asked a lot is, what do I need to get started? Right. And I know what the simple answer is, but what's how did you get started?
I still use a lot of my basic equipment. I had a really interesting / funny conversation the other day with a professional podcaster because I don't consider myself a professional podcaster. This guy came to our studio, used a space to film an episode with me, and brought along 3 cameras and lighting rigs and this, that, and the other. And I was like, gee, and he laughed and went, yeah, I saw you at the Recruitment Agency Expo, and just sort of scratched my head and thought, like, I filmed from an iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's a 3-year-old iPhone, but it does everything I need it to do. I film from one shot, one angle, because I'm not bothered, right? And it works. It does the trick. So why do I need to change what works, right? And there are people that are kind of, like all the gear and like, and want all the top everything. But the simple answer is you can start with as little and basic equipment as you want. We've all got laptops, and our laptops have all got cameras and microphones attached to them. Some of us have even got headsets. Some of us have got USB mics. Some of us then, like, and it just depends on kind of how seriously you want to take it, right? I feel you should never fall into the trap of kind of being the all the gear, no idea kind of person where, right, I need to go and get myself a Rodecaster mic and this, that, and the other. You don't. What you need to do is do it and see if you're still consistent at it and you enjoy it. Because if you enjoy it and it's starting to bring value, then you can start adding hey, we could do with a better camera. Hey, we could do with some better audio. And then you start looking into the hows and the wheres and the whys. I've only recently started using an application that allows me to see on my laptop what the camera is displaying and what the camera is catching. Because up until that point, I would go, right, record on the camera, then run around, jump into GarageBand, set up the mics, and then start recording and not know whether the camera's still rolling or not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's one of those things that if you're into it and you get into it and you know that you're going to kind of continue to do it, which is one of the other things around kind of podcasting is being able to just to physically do it on a weekly, monthly basis, is it starts small, and then if you just fall in love with it, you're going to eventually want to start to upgrade. You're going to want a few toys, right? That's the way. But you're right. You can pretty much start, using you. I mean, I started just doing it on Zoom, right? I just had Zoom. Yeah,
I was just about to say, I was on a podcast the other day
yeah,
where it was on Zoom,
yeah,
and I just
yeah,
thought, hey, cool, fair play to you. You know, you're just getting started out. You don't need to go and pay for a pro
yeah,
sort of account with Riverside
yeah.
or Descript and
I,
whatever. Yeah,
and I
do it
remember
on Zoom.
the
Do it
first
on
one
Teams.
one of the
Why
first ones
not?
I ever did in person. I recorded it on my phone. I had like a little kind of splitted clip mic that the one person I had the other, and it recorded straight onto my
Yeah,
phone. And yeah, so there's
yeah.
ways around it depending if you're going to do it online, if you can do it in person. There's really not much of a barrier to entry, right? That's the thing. You
That's it.
will get to a point. It shouldn't.
Cost shouldn't be an issue.
No.
Cost shouldn't be a barrier. And if as a TA leader you're sitting there thinking,
Yeah.
oh, there's no way I'd get a budget for this. Yeah, there
Yeah.
is, because you don't
You
need a
need
budget for
time,
this.
right? That's what you need. Right. Because which
That's
is
it.
kind of like
That's it.
the next question, right? Is the next one is like, how much time should I devote to this? And again, that's like how long is a piece of string kind of questions, right? How often do you want to do it? Do you want to do it weekly? Twice a week like yourself, every other week like I do, once a week, once a month? Do you want to do it as a season? Do you want to do it as an ongoing thing? Again, it
Yeah.
kind of depends. If everyone's got kind of proper day jobs, so you try and work it around that. And
I
yeah,
think this
it
comes
does.
back to the why, though, doesn't it? Because if you're using it as a EVP piece, if you're using it as a a tactic to get more eyes on your business as a brand, because you're about to embark on a big hiring spree, and you want to be attracting some of the best talent that's out there, then you probably want to take it a bit more seriously at the start to kind of get the traction. If this is more of a, hey, let's see if this kind of works, and let's see if something comes off the back of this, then hey, cool, by all means do once every couple of weeks or once a month kind of releases and whatever, get your stride together and stuff like that. But yeah, it'll always come back to the same
Yeah,
thing, which is, what's the
yeah.
why are you doing this? Because once you know
And
your
and
why,
and the
the
good
how
thing
is
to
easy.
kind of like to shake that down, and you may have done this, is pre-record a few, right? Get some in the bag. Have a
Yeah,
listen back to them, and listening back to them actually is I find is something I've had to learn to do, um, because I don't think a lot of people really like listening to their own voice. But as a podcaster, I found you just have to get over it, right? You've got to listen back to these episodes. You've got to see where you need if it works, right? Especially right at the start.
yeah. If you take your own professional development seriously, then
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely you want to, right? A footballer will review tapes, a boxer will review tapes. Like any person who wants to improve will look back at what they've
yeah,
done to then critique
yeah,
and analyze it. So and that's it. Again, if you're taking it seriously and you really want to do something with this, but at the same time, what you will find is that actually after you've put the first few episodes out, you probably naturally will listen to it, because
yeah,
you'll be excited and you want to hear it and
yeah.
see how it lands and that kind of thing. um it's been a long time since I listened to any of my podcasts back. Yeah, because I just don't like it. But
Yeah,
I know the importance of doing it every now and then, to jump on and go, well, what's the balance of conversation here? How is
yeah.
it coming across? Am I as funny as I think I am, kind of
It
thing.
is a difficult thing, though, right? I think it is a thing that a lot of kind of hosts kind of have to get over.
Yeah.
Last question before I let you go, and probably one of the bigger
Mm.
questions, and actually you're in the best position to answer this, right? Is you've done everything else, you've got it aligned with your EVP, you've decided you've got to go ahead, you've either got budget or you're going to go for the low cost effort to just going to get it up and running. How do you just get it out into the world in the first place, right? I know there's stuff around hosting and artwork and the formats of the files. Forget that, right?
Yeah.
I want to kind of dig. I want to get your perspective on marketing it into the outside world, because that's where you do really well with your podcast. The technical stuff we can talk about another time.
I appreciate that. I think you've got to think, who is your in sales we talk about the ICP, right? I think with podcasts you've got to think about, right, who's your ideal listener profile, and once you know that, where do they hang around, and you've got to make sure you're there. So for me, my ICP is and will always be people in recruitment. So be that talent acquisition, HR, or agency. Where do they hang out? LinkedIn. And what's a supporting sort of place to put that alongside it? YouTube. So for me, it was, I have to be on LinkedIn, I have to be on YouTube. We made the mistakes early on of using things like TikTok and Meta. They didn't work for us. The traction rate was very, very low. In actual fact, it kind of we had a period of time we had an influx of trolls because it just wasn't the right platform for us. People are on there for personal time. They don't want to. I don't want to listen to this. I don't want to watch this. Why is this coming up on my screen? So you've got to think, okay, where do these people hang out? And actually, Meta might be where they hang out. So if you're an engineering firm, and you're trying to attract high-end engineers and sort of, mechanical engineers or technical solutions engineers for your business, it might be that actually Facebook has got 7 or 8 really key groups, and therefore you need to have a good presence on Facebook. It might be that it doesn't. But the platforms that are out there make it incredibly easy. So I, for one, use Spotify for podcasters. We have to upload the audio or video file onto Spotify podcasters, and it will put it out to all of the major ones. So Apple, Amazon, and all the sort of the audio only ones. And then we go and put it onto YouTube separately. It's where you distribute it and how you distribute it is completely up to you. There's AI tools out there now that you can put the entire episode into, and it will clip it up into tiny little clips for you. Things like Opus Clip are pretty well known. Veed, there's a range of them. And all at low cost. But then from a TA perspective, I'd be looking at it going, well, that's my marketing person's job.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, as a marketeer as well, this is great content. So maybe you can be thinking around where else and how you then develop the rest of this kind of content as well. Again, I think that's a bit technical, but it's great to get your insight into the kind of channels you pick. And like yourself, I think we've got a fairly similar setup. It's all done on I think it's called Creator now but Spotify for podcasters. You can stick the video file up on there, and because Spotify allows you to just kind of watch videos on there now, then it just gets chucked out to everywhere else, right? You don't kind of have to worry it. And separately, you have to do your thing on YouTube. But yeah, Nitin, always a pleasure, my friend. It's absolutely brilliant. It's been amazing to get your insights into all of this. As always, if anybody wants to know more about you, we'll include all of your details in the show notes, so people can check out RecTools and people can talk about RecTalk. Check you out on LinkedIn. Probably get you another handful of followers. So thank you very much.
You say that so begrudgingly as well, don't you? Yeah, no, I appreciate this. Thank you for having me on. I shall see you in a couple of days' time at RecFest. Ciao.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the Marketing Rules podcast on Apple, Spotify, and all other major podcasting platforms. I've been your host, James Whitelock, and I hope you can join me and more amazing guests next time.